Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cliff Digital Week and our final session. I'm here in London. I hope you can hear the sights and sounds of London in the background where I am today. I'm really excited for you to join us for Digital Week here at Cliff College. Digital Week is just our opportunity to think as a college and learn together and think more about digital and the opportunities it offers us here at Cliff. There's loads been going on during Digital Week. We've had conversations with Laura Neal from Uberlong. We've had conversations with some guy, Dot Tyler from Tearfund and Richard from Cliff. We've had a round table with Jonas from Spurgeons and Joe Cox-Darling, who's an amazing thought thinker, and also Andrew Sobart, who'll be back again. And we've also had the incredible Mark Crosby with us this week. I'm pretty excited because I've invited one of my friends to come and speak to us today. Just going to invite him in. Hello, Ben. How are you?
Afternoon. How's it going? I'm all good, man.
So well, so well. For those that are watching and are going to watch back later, tell us a little about who you are and what you do, please.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Ben Elliott, and I am in sunny Sheffield right now. I'm the head of communications at a church here called The Well, and I'm also the founder of a group called the Church Comms Collective, which is a peer-to-peer support network for anybody involved in any aspect of church communications. That's my main chunk of my time. I also spend a little bit of time as a freelancer doing general kind of design and all those kind of things which creatives kind of put their name to these days.
Yeah, I love it. And how long have you been at The Well for? And when we'll talk about Church Comms Collective in a second, how long have you been at The Well for?
So yeah, I've been at The Well since it planted 6 years ago, just as as a member of the church, and specifically head of comms for 12 months. And prior to that, I was kind of helping out, serving on kind of creatives and social media and stuff for maybe 3 years or so before that. But it's a church which was I guess planted into a building which sadly the congregation was no longer there for, and we went in, took it over, and God's done amazing things. It's gone from 50 to I think we're probably about 500-600 now in terms of membership, which is awesome. So see that kind of what God's been doing at that time. Yeah, really
love
cool,
it. Man. And we're going to talk a little bit today. We're thinking about building a digital community, and we're going to unpack that. We know each other pretty well now. We've done lots of work on this together, but we're going to talk about this both from a church perspective, so what you've learned at The Well about building community, and maybe some stories that maybe will enrich people or give people some ideas. But you also run the Church Comms Collective, which you just mentioned a little bit. Can you unpack A, where that came from, and B, what its purpose is?
Yeah, sure. So A, when I started helping out with doing a bit of church comm stuff, I was like, there's no one else around me doing that in terms of the church itself, and it's like I was like, man, there's got to be other people out there that are doing this type of thing. How can I ask questions and get ideas? So I joined a couple of Facebook groups which are international based and predominantly US, and bless our brothers and sisters across the pond, a lot of the things that they were discussing weren't so relevant to the things that we face in the UK. Some real extreme stuff about like how many guns are you bringing this Sunday and stuff. Is like, okay, cool, we don't need to worry about that. And I just found that I was thinking, man, I need to chat to the people in the UK church. And thankfully one day somebody posted where are you in the world? And there was a list of kind of people who popped their hand up from the UK. And I thought, I'll just DM these people and see if should we set up a subgroup just to kind of talk about UK specific stuff and just support each other, just that knowledge sharing type thing. And so that was kind of how it started ultimately. And it grew as a Facebook group and a little bit beyond. And then, ultimately the purpose is that for anybody involved in any aspect of church communications to know that they're not alone. There's other people that do this crazy role that we do, be it voluntary or paid, and to be able to kind of ask questions like, how do I get a form for this, or what's the best way to go about doing this, or software recommendations or design recommendations, whatever it is, because it's a huge thing, obviously, comms. But that's the heart behind it. It's just peer-to-peer, generally other people in the same boat, lending each other a hand in the spirit of faith.
So let's dig into building a community, because I think that what certainly me and you know this from our work, but also from our own experience, probably one of the hardest things to do online is build engagement and build a community that's not passive but is engaged. And that's what we're all longing to do, whether it be organisationally or church perspective. What's the journey of the Church Comms Collective been like when it's healthy? What's it been like when it's unhealthy? Give me a little bit of a picture as to the journey.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think the strength of real community and real tangible community which can grow, it needs solid foundations. It needs to start from that place of being gathered for a particular purpose around a particular cause, and it to be, in my opinion, its strongest when it's actually really focused around that one thing. So with the Comms Collective, again, I messaged a few of these guys that are already part of a communications network, so therefore, you know, it's clearly on their heart and their radar, so they're people are interested in this topic. And I said, you're in the UK, so am I. Some of this stuff is specific to us. Shall we set up a subgroup? Yes. There was maybe 10, 15, 20 of us for the first 6 months or so, but actually there was enough foundational stuff there to actually for it to be supportive to one another, and it just gently grew because we're gathered around this niche. There's a genuine sense of, where do I go for help? I'll just ask the guys on the group first if they know the answer to, and that core nucleus then just built out and grew as more people kind of realized that there was something specific to the UK that was there and available to them. We met, I think, at Premier Digital for the first time. We're like, hang about, we're real. This isn't this digital. And then what happened with COVID? I mean, understandably, you know, everyone's forced online almost more than ever, and it just kicked off. So it's now, I think, nearly 1,400 members, representing churches around the UK, but all specific to this one thing of actually, how do I do communication well on behalf of my church? You know, there's nothing beyond that. There's no daft memes. It's focused, good, healthy community, people helping people on this particular topic. And so that's the thing, I think, you know, that's the strength of it. And I think good community is when it's like, yeah, we're gathering around this cause. And so, which is, I mean, you imagine your questions are going to go this way, but it's different to a church, I would say, the collective and how that operates.
Yeah, so let's dig into that then. So a lot of people who are watching this will be wanting two things. One is probably, isn't it, a thriving church community, and we're going to talk about the well and maybe the tactics you use and the techniques you use, and we'll draw back around to the collective because there's some lessons we can learn from both of those groups. Like I'm guessing for you, that have different kind of avenues, techniques, roads to them. So talk to me about the well and what like community, both online and offline, and how those two connect together look like. Just give me a little bit of a picture into that.
Yeah, sure. So when the well started, the predominant members of the kind of founding group of people, 40, 50 folks, were all, I would say, majority late 30s to mid 50s, and probably all of them were on Facebook. And naturally, free platform, no funds to do anything else. Let's just make that the easiest way to communicate with people. So we set up a private Facebook members group, and that has grown to be, I think, around 500 or 600 members now, and which is great. However, I think there's been a seismic shift in the last 6 years in how people themselves use social media and groups, and particularly accelerated during COVID. And I think we're actually at this interesting moment now where the rules, I mean, social's changing so fast anyway, but a lot of the rules that I think we could have applied 6 years ago are no longer relevant, you know. So during COVID, we went from maybe having, I don't know, 3 or 4 posts a week of, you know, in the case of the well, let's say, why are we gathered in that space? That's the first fundamental question. It's because we're members of this church. Now, that churches beautifully represent an abundance of different people and their backgrounds and ages, all sorts, careers, you know, how they actually would communicate in these spaces is different as well. They, you know, beauty of social media is each of our social feeds looks so different depending on the people that we build community with. So we're coming at it from this multitude of places. We're landing in there. So what's the nature of that group? I need to kind of say that first as well. I think the nature of that group ultimately was prayer requests. It was informing people of what was going on, and looking for support and things in the private context. So it's gathered around, I guess, the core thing that a church should do well. You know, it looks, you know, it loves people well, it nurtures and guides to spiritual growth. So they're the core things. Now, however, what happened during COVID, all these people, again, furloughed, stuck at home, and how do I, you know, what goes on? They jump on the group, and all of a sudden we'll be having 30, 40 posts a day, and it just went bonkers. And the problem with that is naturally in Facebook content, you know, a multitude of other voices coming in, and then in the group itself, there just not being organization. So what we actually had to do was for the first time ever, we had to make it post approval. I'm a big believer in actually not doing that. You know, great organic community is where you actually give the trust to the people and say, this is what happens in the collective. We don't use post approval, and maybe 2 or 3 times in 4 years I've had to step in. But ultimately, the idea with non-post approval is that people are free. They work within the guidelines, the frames. They know that they're loved, and they get on with it. With the well, they are loved and they know it. However, there's just so much noise. We had to create posts which they could then comment on each day. Like a day is for the conversation. But now that was cool. However, what's happened now is the flip side. Digital fatigue with Zoom and everything else means that people, in my opinion, and also potentially a lot of stuff around the negativity, specifically on Facebook right now, in terms of media and data stuff and all that kind of thing, means that the activity is absolutely skydive. It's gone straight down. And where are people? Are they still online? Yes, they are. I think they're just interacting in different ways. And this is causing me to ask questions.
Yeah.
Is Facebook the best way to do things? So what we've actually done is we've started using Planning Center, which many folk might be aware of in terms of service planning and stuff. But within that, there's an app called Church Center that they do, and we're now using that so that individual church communities, house groups, whatever you want to call them, can then actually have their own conversation threads specific to the context of their community. So they're asking for prayer or sharing what's going on, and also within that context, it's really clear what they can be part of in the church, be it online or be it on site. And it actually is taking stuff away so that regardless of people's social media preferences, they can actually connect still in that context. And it's kind of translating that and making it really relevant, because ultimately what was happening in these groups as well, I would say Facebook previously, now it's moving more into Church Center, is reflecting the conversations that we would have in a church sanctuary or cafe, not the conversation that we have with the unchurched on the doorstep, which is better reflected in our public-facing social media, which is a whole different kettle of fish, as you well know, Ali.
Yeah, and for those people who want question about that, Mark Crosby very helpfully has talked about that, and so we've because this is been a whole week of stuff, we have tried to separate those two things out, which Ben very helpfully has helped us do, and Mark's got, both Ben and I know Mark well, has got a great book called So Everyone Can Hear, which very helpfully does this job of saying what the two different platforms are for. Okay, so really interesting. So you've now talked about the two different areas you've built community around two different things. One around a church community, which is different, and one around sort of an ideas based, or maybe a job role, or a whatever we want to call communications, a hobby for some people. What are the different techniques you've used? What are some of the success stories from either or of those things? And what are some of the pointers, advice you would want to give to people who are trying to get engagement, like you said, really struggling with it, and are pretty tired of the same post, the Bible passages or the prayer requests? What are some of the techniques you've seen that might work to do
that? Great question. And the simple thing is to remember that we are people interacting with people, and the more personable we can be, the better. So the rules that I kind of have, particularly with the Church Comms Collective, is just trying to be a really good host. So if a group of people arrive at your house for a party, you don't just open the door and let them in and wander off. You say, welcome, do you fancy a drink, a bit of cheese, whatever it is, and you welcome into that particular context, and actually look at how best you can then guide them into that party. So you'd introduce them to other people in the room that might be similar interests, or live in a similar part of town or something like that. You try and connect them up, and we try and do exactly the same thing in a digital context. So when somebody joins, we welcome them, we ask where they're from, what aspect of church communications they're involved in, so that we can link them up with people. And it is that thing of literally going, how can I be a good host? And then the other thing is actually going out of your way in two areas. One is one is actually engaging with content itself. So even if it's a post that someone asks in our context, how do I use Illustrator to produce this? I'm not an expert on Illustrator at all. I'm an absolute novice, but I would still pipe up and they go, great question. This is something I'm really interested in. And, and then I might tag somebody who I think would be able to answer that well. So it's a case, again, of bringing people in, going out of your way to do it, and to actually have a healthy, thriving community. People, when they put themselves out there, if they're not answered, if they're not engaged with, they're not going to post again. Why would they? They're being ignored. So I think there is that thing of, as the host, it's your responsibility to love and look after well. And, if you can spread that out and have others involved in actually doing that, then that's absolutely awesome. The other point I was going to say, my mind is just slightly lapsed now, Ali, the hosting side of things. And the other thing was language.
Okay.
When we actually write stuff down, it's so easy to misinterpret things. So, I do use kind of added punctuation to really emphasize joy and, try and be as encouraging as possible. I use GIFs because actually, a cheeky GIF with a celebration or whatever, it's these little kind of visual cues that actually goes, oh, he's really got my back on this. I want people to know that we're on board with them and stuff. So there is, for me, it's about, it is a time investment, but if you shouldn't be doing this if you've not got the heart and the time to do it, because, and that's what, particularly in a church context, I think if church leaders need to know that if you want to have replicate an in-person an in-person experience in a digital context, it takes time, just like it would to actually host an event, to kind of be present in those arenas.
Yeah, really, really helpful there. So let me dig into a few things you said that I think are really helpful. You talked about a host, and I must admit I'm a terrible partner in crime on Church Comms Collective, because we let you do all the work and then occasionally pipe up with ideas. But so there is a dynamic where, particularly when engagement is difficult to get, that being the host is such a key job, because it can feel a bit like a Groundhog Day, can't it? Where you're the only person who's posting. But the dynamic of doing that is really important, isn't it? Because one of the things that you're amazing at, if I may say, is your consistency of community is huge. Like, you're in both at the Well and on the Church Comms Collective, consistency is such a high value in church comms, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? I put consistency in there, and I'm probably inconsistent in every other aspect of my communication. People try to phone me or email me to come listen that through. But you know what? It's interesting. So, for those that don't know, in the early days of the collective, Ali was one of the first people that I think we connected through the church network in the US, and we're like, he's just down the road in Cliff, and I'm in Sheffield. This is mental. And we went and had a breakfast at Chatsworth Farm Shop or something, and talked about stuff. At the same time, there's a lady called Catherine, who was part of the Girls Brigade, and we were like, hang about, we were close by. And what those guys did for me were almost like accountability partners, support partners, to help really kind of just, I bounce ideas off them and help me formulate what this is going forward. And they're still doing that now. And I'm ultimately, I guess, running it from the perspective of the day-to-day. But I think it's really important, if you are trying to lead a community in a church context or any of the context, to surround yourself with people that, get what you're about, get what you're doing, cheerlead you, and, say the hard truths when stuff, and both Ali and Catherine done that amazingly for me and given me some great challenge along the way to help focus. Because, if you don't focus on actually what the core vision and values are of what you're doing, it doesn't have to be a flipping charity to do that. This is about just those principles are important in itself. It just helps steer that ship and actually go where you want it to do. And if you get off course, you're going to sink. So it's important to surround yourself with a couple of folks that can help with that.
Really love that. I'm going to ask you a question I did prep you for, but I don't know if you've had time to think about it. So, success. Let's talk about the Well first, because I think that probably replicates what a lot of people will experience. On a week-to-week basis, what are you saying success is on a week-to-week basis or month-to-month, year-to-year basis for the Well? What are some of the hallmarks of a great online community, church community?
I think success right now is different to what it was a couple of years ago. Success a couple of years ago was to see people just engaging with content. Now it's to hear and see people actually come forward with the content. And there's a seismic shift in that space. And I think, we're seeing God move and awesome stuff happen, and hearing those testimonies of, lives changed and people redeemed and stuff. And actually that coming forward is just, it's like, well, this is what we need. The power of testimony. We're in the age of the self, and actually hearing from people tangible stories, not just stories from the leadership and stuff, but stories from congregational members of what God's doing, and those type of things. So success for me is feeling like a safe environment for people to be able to do that, for it to be an encouraging process in doing that, and also that digital does facilitate tangible relationship. Now, I believe that actually you can have a complete digital existence. I think we can have meaningful digital relationships completely. There's loads of people in the collective I've never met in the flesh that I feel like I know them really well. At the same time, in the voice of the local church, and also mirrored, I guess, in the collective. There is also this tangible power that things can start in one place and they can lead to actually the physical thing. If I can't wait, there's a few people out there, I can't wait to fist bump for the first time and say, mate, it's so good to see you in the flesh. This is cool. So there, it facilitates things. So again, success is where, in the local church setting for the well, is where actually digital relationships then turn into people actually engaging with stuff in a church context. And we do community, we do life together, and we can, worship together in church or serve on team in a children's group or whatever it is. But, where life is lived out as a result of a digital beginning. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And so, we're nearing the end. We've got another 5 minutes or so left. Just talk to me about maybe one or two things that you would say were success. Maybe one failure and one success story, if you've got them, for things that you think have worked really well for the well, and then afterwards we'll just talk about. I just want people to be able to find Church Comms Collective, so we'll just talk a little bit about maybe what the future of Church Comms Collective might look like and where people can find it. So, what's some of what's one major success you've come across, or one thing you've done that you're really proud of at the well?
Cool. I think with the well, the success is the amount of people that we've managed to we've managed to create a digital journey on, as well as the physical being together type thing, which is built up over time. It's a slow brew. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's about investment in that. The failure and the thing that I think we've missed is I do the collective in my spare time completely. Right. I've got a job in terms of what I do for the well, and what I think personally we could have done better there is actually, in an ideal world, having a digital minister, actually having someone who's dedicated to the kind of groups on a deeper level to be able to actually really steer that community and give it all their focus. And that's all about, what a dream scenario to have. So many churches would love that, and it's completely unrealistic that they've got the funds to be able to support that, or someone that can give their time. But I know that if we, the thing I work at a minute is how can we do that in a tangible and sustainable way? Yeah.
I love that. And then what, if you've got a failure story, that's cool. If not, don't worry about it. Or maybe one thing you tell yourself, but we could maybe come back to that. Ben, I want to end with this. So you, if there's somebody watching this who's really early in church communications, who's just started out or been at it for a little while, is in a church where they're hammering away, what's the one piece of advice you just want to say to him? Maybe one bit of encouragement you just want to say to him today?
I would say that you're amazing. The fact that God's put it on your heart and you've been put in that position, don't underestimate that. I'd say come to Jesus first in all things, ask him, just kind of embrace the peace of the Holy Spirit upon you. And then I'd say you're not alone. No question is a daft question. Find other people at churches, either in your locality or in a digital context, and journey with them, learn from other people, because to make those steps, I did exactly the same. It's all about those little incremental steps, and you learn so much along the way, and man, it can be a really incredible adventure. So, and don't give up too quick.
I love that. And where can people find, I'll post the links in the chat, but there's a Facebook group in there. That's the best place to point people to.
Yeah, well, if you go to the churchcommscollective.com, as of today, you can now join the new Church Comms Collective. We are migrating from Instagram, from Facebook, to a standalone platform, so that anybody, regardless of your social media preference, can effectively connect with the church communicators.
Breaking news. Love it. Ben, thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for being a great friend to me, but also thank you for giving up your time today, and I'll see you very soon in person, I hope.
Yeah, I love to, man. Bless you guys.
All right, have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye. That was Ben Elliott. We'll post in the chat about the Church Comms Collective. If you're watching this and you're a church communicator, I just want to repeat what Ben said. Well done. We're really proud to be a part of this journey. This is we're in the middle of the last thing at Cliff Digital Week, and so I thought it was really cool to invite the guy that I work really closely with, Andrew Stobart, back. Andrew, how are you? I'm going to unmute you.
Very good. Now I can unmute myself. Yes, good. Well, thank you.
We've made it to the end of Digital Week, and we've figured out how to unmute ourselves.
Absolutely.
I've got I've got a few questions that have come in that I want to unpack, and then just maybe a chance. I've got a couple of thoughts to share about some of the things that I've taken away from the stuff that I've watched. I mean, I've watched probably more than you because you've been busy this week. But what are some of the things that you've taken away from the stuff that you've seen being involved with this week?
Great. Well, I mean, I have managed to see quite a bit of this week and participate in bits along the way. And I mean, it's been such a full week, and thanks to you and the team at Cliff who have been pulling this together. You know, everything from the Taizé service, the You Belong retreat yesterday, through to the lunchtime learnings, and of course the forum on Tuesday. And we've had two centre events this week with Generation and with the Samuel Chadwick lecture earlier this morning. So it's been such a full week. I think, I mean, if you want me to say what my takeaways are from this week, I think two things have really sprung to mind. If you'll forgive me using a short Latin phrase, just because, you know, I'm a theologian.
I'll let you off.
There's a phrase which is in medias res, which means in the middle of things. It's literally Latin for in the middle of things. And it just strikes me that in a lot of the conversations this week, one of the things we've bumped up against is the idea that we are always doing our discipleship, engaging in evangelism, engaging in mission in the middle of things. We don't start from scratch, but we start in the middle of what's going on. And that's true in terms of God's engagement with us. You know, God is not created by us. We're in the middle of what God is already doing in the world. But also when we get involved with the world, we're in the middle of what's already happening in the world. So, you know, some of the comments about how we engage with social media, we don't create the platform. The platform's already there. We get involved with something that's already going on. So I think that's been a really important thing that's kind of popped out a number of times this week, the idea that we don't create this. And of course, that's really important for us as Christians because we're not the creator of our discipleship. That's what God does within us. We're also not the creator of mission. Mission is God's work in the world, and we get through evangelism to participate in it. So I think that's kind of being in medias res is really important and significant. And social media and our digital engagement, I think, reminds us of that. And the second thing, which is consequent on that, is that if we're already beginning in medias res, in the middle of things, in the middle of this kind of jam-packed world of digital engagement, then one of the biggest things that we need is wisdom. And actually, we can learn all sorts of skills and techniques, but possibly the thing that we need to create and cultivate most is a wisdom of digital engagement, which enables us to see what actually can work well and will work even better in a digital environment. And actually where we also need those moments of appropriate disengagement in order to attend to the other things that God's asking us to do. So I think that kind of wisdom of what should be done and what can't be done, what might be done, and what we can, you know, what we physically are involved in, I think is probably the area that I'm again taking away from this week, thinking, I want to think about what does digital wisdom look like.
Yeah, so I've taken away the great things. I'm not going to bust out any Latin because it's not in my skill set. But I think we know each other well enough that I have a very practical digital skill set. I think one of the things that I've noticed is this week is that our job as people who are, or my job as someone who's a practical person in this area, as was Ben, who was just here a minute ago, it's our job to join the gap between the practical and the impact that digital is having on our whole humanity and the changing nature of that. And so I think reactively, it's important we ask ourselves the deeper questions of what impact is this having on who I understand God to be? What impact does this have on how I connect with the community around me? What impact does this have on humanity? And also what people are being missed out by this? Like who are we missing in this? And I think they're really important questions to me. And the second is just the fact that I think my prediction is that in 5 to 10 years' time, we'll stop talking about digital because it'll just be the norm. So we'll stop doing Cliff Digital Week because everything will be digital, money will be digital, life will be digital. And so it's important that we, as practitioners and thinkers, join together to do weeks like this where we both help people practically do their work, but also ask deeper questions and theological questions, which is what me and you and the team that are behind this wanted to do this week, was draw those two, the praxis and the thinking, together and try and connect those dots up. So I think that's what I'm taking away from it, without any Latin, sadly. But next time I do this, I'm going to come up with something great. We've got a few questions that me and you are going to try and tackle that weren't able to tackle during the week in sort of the next 5 minutes. We're not going to be long because this is the beginning of something for us rather than the end of something. So if you're watching this, do stay tuned, and we will work out as a team how we want to move this forward and what that will look like. So stay tuned for that. And we've got plenty of courses and all that stuff available, so do check that out. So the first question, which I've given you a precursor to, is to what extent are the discussions around theological anthropology shaping our discussions on church in a digital age? So maybe explain what some of those terms mean, because I'm not sure I always understand what those terms mean. But how do we go about answering that question?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, I mean, anthropology, when we're using it in this setting, means our understanding of who we are as human beings. Theological anthropology is, of course, doing that within the context environment of grace, of acknowledging that we are who we are because God makes us to be who we are. So I suppose this question is asking about that kind of humanity, who we are as we engage in digital church. And I think that's really significant, because I think the question of who are we is clearly not a new one. Theological anthropology is not just something that's popped into our minds because we're now living in a digital age. It's kind of some of the questions that have been sort of echoing around with, for all of humanity's existence, if you like. Who are we? So I think the questions are the same, but clearly some of the answers that we're giving are now slightly different, because we inhabit our bodies, our lives in slightly different ways because of the potential of the digital environment. And I think that's so I think that's, it's important to note some of the new things that we might talk about. Our sort of virtual reality, our kind of sense of place, our sense of being. These are different now because of the kind of digital environments we live in. I suppose I'd also say that there's some things which haven't changed. One of theological anthropology would say that we are who we are because God calls us into being, God calls us into existence. And again, that goes back to that kind of, the priority of grace, the priority that actually, no matter the fact that we're shaped by the digital environment, actually the ultimate shaping of who we are is always being done by God. So I think, there are some things that will be different in the digital environment. There are some things that we need to hold on to because of our theological engagement.
Yeah, and I think we've talked this before about the lessons about praxis and thinking, and it tends to be, and we have talked about this before, it tends to be that it takes a while for our thinking to catch up with our practice, and that probably has been doubled in COVID, as in we've had to speed up our uses of technology, we've had to adapt, we've had to change, and so our thinking will take time to catch up with our praxis, just because that's humanity. We fix a problem and then we work out what the solution was afterwards. That's certainly my way of living. And so I think that the merger, I think I've said this before, the merger between physical and digital is now getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And so, again, that will affect our understanding of humanity, but will also affect our understanding, therefore, of who God is inside, in process and inside. Therefore, there's some really beautiful dynamics that have happened this week, particularly in the roundtable conversations we're having around who has our humanity changed? Is our humanity changing, or is the questions being asked still the same, just in a different shape, in a different place, and maybe the emphases on those questions are slightly different, and maybe that's something we'll come back to when we next like have a conversation will be about our humanity in a digital age as much as our.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in some of the language that's now used around this. So there's this phrase called "on life," which I've picked up in a couple of places. The idea that it's not online and then real life, but actually on life, this kind of almost seamless kind of stepping from sort of one place to another, even though, because actually it's all part of the same, we are always ourselves, we're embodied in our engagements, even if those engagements are online. So I think that idea of on life, what does it mean to be human in an on life world? I think you're absolutely right. We need to keep thinking about this.
Another comment, which I think I could have a go at answering first, because it's in my sort of field house, is around people getting lost and unnoticed, like in a digital world. That the digital world's got so many multiple layers to it. It's so fast changing that connection's going to feel really complicated to achieve and receive. I think I would answer that to say that is absolutely true. That the human piece of work, and we at Cliff are experiences on a day-to-day basis, our relationship with our online personas, our online personalities is affecting us, like it's affecting our being, and particularly the way we experience the world, and that physical like nature is being affected by what we do online, and how people experience joy and gratification and success, and it's being impacted. So I think I would say, again, our thinking will catch up with our practice, at least in hope. And I think there's some beautiful conversations going on in churches around how we encourage people to do this. And we've heard in our prayers this week about media fasts and about taking time off. I think I always sit deeply uncomfortable with that, right, Andrew? Because I'm like, I mean, I am digital. It gives me life, it gives me energy, but I think I'm of the opinion that we've got a little bit of work to do to understand how to be better followers of Jesus in this space.
Yeah. I mean, I think that to draw something out of our Wesleyan Methodist tradition that we obviously sit in at Cliff, there's a great sermon from John Wesley from the 18th century where he clearly doesn't talk about digital communication, but he talks about kind of concentric circles of our engagement with the world, with, of course, the very middle of that being about our love of God and all, but actually the different kind of levels of engagement that kind of are part of our deepening discipleship over time, if you like. And I think that one of the things, just thinking about these networks, recognizing that even if we discount the digital world, we all are part of multiple different networks, whether it's our, families, whether it's our friendship groups, whether it's our communities that we engage with. The Amazon, that's something that we need to kind of be aware of, and so therefore it's no different in the digital sphere. It's just that perhaps they become more noticeable to us because we can see how many people we're engaged with. Facebook tells us how many friends we have or how many people are engaging with us. So we just become more aware of something that actually is part of how we navigate life. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, humans are still, I think my end, and we'll wrap it up here, is to say humans are humans and God's still God, and we're just figuring out the relationship. We're always figuring out the relationship between those two things. The thing that's been thrown in the middle is digital, and certainly me as an individual, but also us as a community are trying to figure out day by day what that means for us in relation to discipleship, what that means for us in relation to mission and evangelism, what that means for us in relation to theology and training. And that's all the kind of questions we're asking. Andrew, thank you so much for being with you. I'm going to kick you out of the call so I can wrap this up. Thank you for all you've done, and you on this panel are representing everyone who's been engaged. So we just want to massively together thank all the people that have been involved this week in whatever form, whether it's behind the scenes making the events happen or whether it's presenting. These are people who are involved in Cliff at all different levels. And so go to the website if you want to find out more. But thank you, Andrew, for being with us. That is Cliff Digital Week. Thank you so much for being with us. you can go to the website to check out all the incredible work that's being done at Cliff. Just go to cliffcollege.ac.uk and you'll find out so much about Cliff and all our amazing courses and work and our amazing teams that are involved. This is and was Digital Week. You'll be able to catch up on all the stuff that's been said on our YouTube or our Facebook pages. Please go back over that. We will get back to you over what we're going to do with Digital Week in the future and digital learning in this style in the future. If you've got any feedback, do let us know. Send us a message, send us an email in the contact, and we'd love to receive that. But thank you so much for joining us this week and being a part of this incredible event. Thank you again to all the team and the speakers, and have a great day.